What happens with project management, as you can see, is if you have poor project managers, it's stressful for everyone. So when I talk about critical thinking skills and project management, it's an important part of what to develop as a manager and as a leader. So let's repeat the lessons that we've talked about so far. 1, you can't proclaim yourself to be a leader. It needs to be earned. 2nd, humor helps. It's a large part of my management style. It's especially important in stressful times. 3rd, please don't be a jerk. Treat people in the way that you would like to be treated, and you should do that always. And the 4th one that we've just talked about is that you need to be a reliable and competent manager to be a leader. So here are some reflections on management and leadership that I'd like to offer up to you. We've talked about the ability to manage and deal with ambiguity, think critically, and project manage. But I've also found that the managers that I've worked with that are consultative in their style are far, far more successful than others. Consultative style means that they ask others for their ideas and suggestions as they realize that the thinking of the many is better than the thinking of the one or the thinking of the few. In short, you're going to get way better solutions and innovations when you consult with the people that you work with and who work with you. But I've also found that managers need to be decisive when it comes to getting and giving direction or setting priorities. The trait that I've found really irritates people tremendously is when a manager pocket vetoes something. Has anybody heard that phrase before, a pocket veto? A pocket veto is when somebody who's your boss doesn't say yes, doesn't say no, they just don't get back to you. They just put it in their pocket and it kind of goes away. So what they're not good at doing is something that's critical for a leader to do, and that is they're not giving any direction on an issue. In fact, they're avoiding it. And that's something that you should not do. You will lose trust in the people that you work with if you do it that way. So you need to be clear. And if you can't answer the person at a particular time, say, I can't respond to that decision. But be honest and communicate effectively. So being decisive is important. I also have no surprises, and I mean exactly that. No surprises for those that you work with, as well as those that you work for. And this is a really, really big rule of mine with the folks that I work with, as I feel that any problem can be solved if we learn about it in enough time. What happens is, though, that sometimes people have a fear of being the messenger of bad news, or they have a fear that if they bring bad news, they won't be considered competent. They bring bad news about something that they're doing. So what they do is they just don't tell anyone there's a problem. And they often wait and wait and wait until it becomes too late to repair the problem and to fix it without an excessive amount of time, money, energy. And it would have been much better spent if the individual had let their boss know that in fact there was a problem and raising the red flag. This is in large part an organizational issue. Some organizations just like to shoot the messenger. And they basically set up a culture where people do not want to bring bad news forward. And that's not a good thing. If it doesn't, so one should not shoot the messenger. Bad news is something that people need to feel very comfortable bringing forward. And you need to create a culture that values that and cultivates that so people feel comfortable in order to do it. My job is very much the same. I make very sure that I give the president of this university and others that should know a big heads up if I suspect that there's a problem or a risk that seems to be escalating. That's my responsibility to make sure that people are informed. Similarly, I make sure that everyone that I work with knows that bad news brought to my door is okay. It happens to everybody. And that we need to be able to feel comfortable to do that. And I also make sure they understand it's a major responsibility of theirs to communicate issues of concern quickly and honestly so that we can get on to fixing the problem. One of the most tragic examples of a culture that failed in this regard is the Challenger disaster. And what I'm talking about here is the Space Shuttle Challenger that exploded on liftoff in 1986. It exploded on liftoff due to a failed O-ring. It was known that there were issues with the integrity of the O-ring at low temperatures, and the temperatures the morning of the flight were indeed below freezing. So why did the shuttle take off that day? A lot of research has been done around the decision-making and the tragedy of the Challenger, and researchers that have examined the days and the hours leading up to that flight have concluded the following. One is the fact that when people discussed whether the flight should take off or not, what occurred is the fact that people spoke about advocacy versus inquiry. Meaning the fact that they chose sides and they argued their side of the argument versus actually setting all the facts on the table and everybody valuing learning from each other to come to a consensus. The second is that oftentimes the right folks were not in the room. We need to remember this was 1986 and there were 3 sites that were managing the Challenger at that time. There was not Skype, there was not telephone conferencing quite the same way. So the people were not in the same room and they were conferring via telephone. Now we all know that it's often very difficult to convey your opinions, it's very difficult to convey data, it's very difficult to communicate if you're not face to face. So in that instance, not having all the right people in the room together negatively affected the decision making that was done. Also, people, when they were interviewed, said that they were wary to express their concerns. They were wary that management would think badly. They were worried the fact that the vendor that was involved, that was more Thiokol, that was concerned about the fact that being able to bring up the O-ring and what that would do in terms of the liftoff. There was also concerns brought on by NASA in terms of canceling the Challenger. So people didn't feel comfortable expressing their concerns in an honest way with their upper management and with the rest of the team. The other thing that they found is this issue that's called, and this is theory, is called project escalation. Project escalation is when no one wants to make the decision to stop a project. And it is called escalation. And what it basically comes from is that people have worked on a project for so many hours and so many days and so many weeks and so many years. Monies and resources have been spent to achieve a certain result of this project that at the very end of it, right before it's going to be completed, people don't want to stop it. It's like the train is coming and it can't be stopped. A similar example of this is the recent failure of the ignition switches at General Motors. It's another example, a tragic example, of how project escalation resulted in a tragic and deadly result. So this is just another example of why project management skills and the ability to do that is important. So if you're a leader, you're responsible for supporting a culture that fosters people telling it like it is. Some people call that behaving in a most ethical manner or behaving in a most responsible manner within an organization. But that's leadership lesson number 5 that I'm going to give to you tonight, and it's the most important one. Now, for a short leadership test. Won't be graded, but I ask you all to participate. Here are 4 statements. Only 4, and I want everyone to pick the one that best describes you. So read each of the 4 and pick the one that best describes you. I want you to be honest with yourself. I also want you to realize that, of course, people actually have a mix of these characteristics. But if I was going to ask you that you could only choose one that best described you, which one would it be? So let's take a minute while you do that. Ready? Okay. No, I got some, no, I can't decide. Just one, you can only pick one. And I know that's hard, but pick the one that best describes you. Ready now? Okay. I won't ask you to raise your hands, okay? But if you'd like to, it would be interesting to see the count of people's, because it will also tell something about the mix, and I'll give you some information about how millennials act as well. So how many people chose number one? Raise your hands. Okay. You can. Remember we said it's a mix, okay? That's fine, don't be shy. Okay. If you chose number one, you lean towards being a results-oriented leader. That's a good thing because you're often inspiring, dynamic, and get results. But you need to be careful of the downside of this leadership style. You can also come across as not caring about people, being a bully, and only doing things good for the short term. So it's got its upside. Each one of these is going to have its upside and its downside. Okay, how many people chose number two? If you chose number two, you are a relational leader. You are caring and supportive of the folks you work with and interested in them as people. At times, though, this style can be viewed as someone who lets folks get away with bad performance because you like them, or that you value loyalty in those people over their performance. How many of you picked number three? If you think you're most like number three, you might be thought of as fun to work with, ready to try new things, and open-minded. But on the downside, folks you work with might see you as someone who starts things and doesn't finish them, or likes to tackle lots of little surface issues and does not want to pay attention to tough tasks that might take a lot of time to complete. You kind of flit or have a tendency to be able to do that or suspected of that. Finally, okay, now, if you haven't raised your hand, you're busted now, because we're at number four. So, the number fours. Okay, if you're number four, people will view you as making clear and well-informed decisions, but they might also think that you're closed-minded and over-focus on the facts, never taking a bold action for change. Now, for most of you, you might have learned something about yourself tonight, but as I said, you're often a mix of these characteristics. What I thought was interesting was the fact that there was probably the number one group of the relational leaders. And in fact, people who are in your generation, in terms of your age group, tend to be highly relational in the ways that they work. They like to work in groups, they like to be collaborative, they have high collaborative skills and be able to do that. So it's important the fact that you understand the fact that being a relational leader, in fact being all of these, have their pluses and minuses. One of the things to also think about is the fact that if you sense that you're a certain style of a leader, the organization that you become a part of, the company that you work for is going to be really important, the people that you work for are going to be really important. So you're going to have to sense what kind of leadership style they have and possibly have to adapt. So it is important to spend time to be able to understand what style that you might have as a leader, and also understand the styles of other people as they come and work with you and work for you as well. Okay, so let's review the leadership lessons that we talked about. First thing we said, you can't proclaim yourself a leader. Got to be earned. Got to be earned absolutely every day. You can be named a boss, but you can't be named a leader. Humor helps, especially in very, very stressful times. Bless you. That's humor's, and I didn't set that up. Humor helps, especially in very stressful times. It's important to be able to do that. It also builds collaboration and camaraderie with the folks that you work with. Don't be a jerk. Very important. Don't be a jerk. Treat people with respect. Treat them as you would expect to be treated, and do it every single day. Be a reliable and competent manager. You need to be able to do that to be a leader. Always, always be ethical and responsible, and always, always make sure that you're working as hard as you can, so being ethical and responsible is a high priority and value for your organization. Never compromise your ethics. Never compromise your ethics in any business situation or any personal situation when it comes to you as a professional. It's important to be able to take away from that. I spoke much tonight about leadership and really framed leadership as something that everybody would aspire to. But I also want to share with you that the leaders of Challenger that I spoke about also felt great sorrow and great failure when that flight that they led ended in the deaths of the flight crew that was aboard, and that the entire nation questioned their honesty as well as their integrity. So there are times when it is most difficult to be a leader. But in the most difficult of times, when you can't see yourself a way forward, when you feel like giving up, that is when leaders are most accountable to lead. So when you feel there's nothing left, that you're ready to give up, that's when you must call upon yourself to be a leader, when those challenges bring you to that brink. Just as the leaders that were involved with the Challenger had to figure out next steps after that. So what I want to add is that thought, and I want to leave you with some words of wisdom from one of our nation's greatest leaders. It says the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. That is the true measure of a leader, and it was offered to us, those wise words, by Martin Luther King Jr. With that, I want to thank everyone for sharing this time with me. I enjoyed it immensely. You guys rock. I also want to leave some time for some questions and answers, and just entertain anything that you might want to ask or tell me. John's going to get the question, and I'm going to get the answer. Hi. Can you say your name first, and what your major is, and what your year is?
Okay, my name is Jessica Green. I'm a freshman, and I'm a pre-OT major. My question is, what leadership number style are you most? I mean, everybody's always.
I'm 4. I'm very data-driven and very, I'm relational too, okay, and I've worked on it, but I'm probably a 2 and a 4 if I'm going to take anything like that.
Jessica Heatherman, accounting. What exactly does a provost do?
What exactly does a provost do is the question. Formally, I am the Chief Academic and Student Affairs Officer of the university. And what that means is that all of the colleges and their faculty and staff, all of student affairs, all of enrollment management, financial aid, records and reg, as well as IT advising, works with me. So basically, everything that touches you guys, both inside and outside of the classroom, I'm fortunate enough to be able to work with folks on to make it a better experience for you. Does that work? Okay.
Henry Huckamacky, bio major, chem minor, pre-med track.
What year?
Sophomore.
Okay.
What one trait about yourself do you think has allowed you to be the most successful in your career?
I enjoy working with people. I think that you have to be a people person, and I'm a people, as I hope you kind of sense, okay? I'm a people person, so I like that. I have really good project management skills that I've developed over time. But it's basically the people person. I'm also really curious, okay? I'm a person that's a really curious person, so I like to learn other things from people, and I'm amazed at it. As my career has progressed, I really enjoy, the most part of what I like about my job is to get to be able to work with people and coach them, to really reach the next level of their own potential, and to work with them in terms of being able to do that. But I would say my curiosity as well is just I really like being around people.
Good evening, I'm John Junior, accounting information system. My question is, how do you motivate others around you?
How do I motivate others around me? I have two ways that I do that. One way that I do it is I actually manage by objectives. Okay, every single year I sit down with all my direct reports, and we outline what they need to accomplish this year to move their organization forward. And the reason that I do that is every single day we're busy. I mean, you can fill the day, every single day, with as I describe it, keeping the trains running, getting the work done, making sure the classes are in place, making sure we have the right things to be able to advise. I mean, that's just a full day. So we often forget about the big boulders that we need to push uphill that don't get done in a day, that it could take a year to be able to complete that bigger project. And that's kind of what we write on these objectives, because the folks that work for me have to be able to do their jobs or they wouldn't have that job. What I'm really looking for them to do is to advance those bigger priorities over the year to make transformational change for the university. So I think by my sitting down and talking about that with them and meeting them with them on that, it's not like I'm telling them what to do. They're bringing to me what they think are the priorities that they have in place. So hopefully I motivate them, that way, by having that shared expectation, and that I'll support them. But I'm very, very programmatic in doing it.
Hi, I'm Angie Vaphius. I'm an art major.
Where are you?
I'm here. I'm a junior, and my question is, what kind of business did you have before you came back to education?
The main business that I had is that I was in the automotive business, and I ended up in the automotive components business, and it was a powdered metal component business. And we were the largest powdered metal component company, manufacturer, provider in the United States, the second largest in the world. Now you're going to ask, what are powdered metal components? There's 38 pounds of powdered metal components in every single car. And they're basically gears and sprockets, all sorts of things that are in the engine and the powertrain is what we did. So I worked making round things rounder and flat things flatter, and then put them in cars.
Hi, Samantha Ryan. I'm a psychology and communications major. It's my second year. When's the hardest time that you've had to lead others, and how did you get them? How did you get others through that point in time?
Probably the hardest time that I ever had leading others was actually when I was in the automotive industry, when there was a collapse of capacity of sales. And it was an industry-wide phenomenon. People just stopped buying cars, and this was in the early 90s. And there was a tremendous decrease in the number of vehicles that were sold in the United States. And we actually had to close a factory. And people were put out of work. That's never something that somebody ever expects to have to do. It's never something that anybody wants to have to do, but because of the external issues of the industry, we had to make some decisions about doing some things. I spent time with the plant. We did everything that we could in terms of giving as much severance that we could, working with the unions. It doesn't mean that it was easy to do, but we tried to do the right thing, and we tried to do the right thing in terms of our communication. So to be honest with you, that's by far, I think anybody who tells you that having to have somebody not have their job anymore is probably the most difficult thing that somebody can do, and be able to operate that way, okay?
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Jara Hamid. I am an apparel textile merchandising major, fourth year. My question is, how do you pass on your leadership style to another person while also being respectful to their own leadership style as well?
That's a great question. I really, and that's really about talent management. one of the things that I think is really important for a leader to do is to attract, retain, and develop the best talent. I feel firmly committed to do that with the faculty that we have on this campus, with the staff that we have on this campus, with the instructional staff on the campus, because of the fact that they actually do so many of the things and lead so many initiatives and are responsible for all the outcomes. The way that I think you can best do that is the fact that being respectful to their style is get into this coaching mode. And I use the word coaching a lot because of the fact that coaches, if you say you're coaching somebody, you're making it clear the fact that you think that they have great potential and that you want to work with them to realize it. I mean, I've had people that coach, I play golf, I've had people coach me in golf where they just moved me a little one way or moved me a little the other way or switched my grip a little bit, and it made a big difference. So they were respecting my style and they were trying to make it better by giving me advice on how to improve. So I think by using the word coaching means the fact that you're telling somebody, I think you're really good, and all I'm trying to do is just make you better. So let's talk about how we can work together to do that. Does that help?
I'm Christina. I'm a theater major and I'm a freshman. And regarding motivation, is there ever a time when you yourself have trouble being motivated? And if so, how do you keep others motivated?
Yeah, I think that's a very, very good question. I talked a little bit about humor and stress. One of the things that you have to be really cognizant of when you're a leader is if you are stressed out, everybody around you is stressed out. So part of your job, if you're in those positions, is to learn how to manage stress and learn how not to get down in the dumps and feeling sorry for yourself and things like that, or not seeing a way out. One of the things that ice cream is a big thing for me, I gotta tell you, okay? If I'm feeling kind of low, you know, I hit the ice cream and be able to do that. I also will, I can't do it as much because I'm in administration and I live in Welch, but when I was a dean, when I was starting to feel sorry for myself and feeling stressed out, I would just go out in the halls and talk to students and faculty. And then I'd come back in and realize that I had the best job in the world. So being able to just be with students and be with faculty is something that made me keep energized and really told me that I did have the best job in the world.
Hello, I'm Aki Youngdahl, I'm a freshman and business major this year. And my question is, are you aware of any unethical business leadership in this century on a national level or affecting many nations these days?
Well, we talked about, I mean, Enron is probably pretty famous to be able to take a look at what was done there. So there's large scale and small scale scandals in terms of it. And if you take a look at Enron and take a look at the outcome of Sarbanes-Oxley, are you an accounting major?
No, I don't actually take any business classes.
Okay. Well, the accounts will tell you. So there have been several pieces of scandal, let's put it on unethical behavior, that have dealt with regulation coming out in terms of business to be able to do that. So it's not something that you don't see. People can make the wrong decisions and often don't know how to back away from it. But the point is that's your responsibility, is to make the right decision and always act ethically.
Jessica Beeford, education major, senior. Might be a little smaller term than business. However, how would you deal with leadership versus like a teacher versus principal versus school board? If, for example, like the curriculum you did not agree with, like it, or the testing practices, how far is too far to go if you're risking your job versus like ethics of just some, you know, student education or even bigger scale like the Challenger?
Okay. We all have to take a look at the consequence of something. I always like to be able to, and I'll use the example of being a teacher with a curriculum, et cetera, because I have a similar experience in my job, where there's differences in terms of curriculum. I think the fact is that you need to be able to learn how to communicate effectively to the folks that might be in decision-making positions, and that's the first thing. I always give everybody the benefit of the doubt. If I've heard that somebody disagrees with me, I'll just kind of figure that maybe I didn't explain myself well enough, maybe they didn't have all the details of the facts. So I'll go in not defensive and not on charge, but I'll try and go in with some facts that maybe they don't have and be able to present a case. If for some reason it doesn't work, I'll often ask them, what else do you need that I haven't provided you that you might need to be able to switch your mind? Which is kind of a weird thing to ask people when you ask them that. And you'd be amazed at the kind of response that you get. They'll actually tell you, well, you didn't tell me this if you had told me this. And then you kind of know how their brain is thinking about the situation. So I spent a lot of time trying to understand their decision-making pattern and what would be important for why they reached the conclusion that they did. In the end, if what you're dealing with is an ethical situation, you feel there's a lack of responsibility with that for the children, then you need to elevate, okay? And I would go to, but I always would tell the principal that I heard you, I might not agree with you, but I feel like I'm compelled to go to the school board. I never surprise people so they feel like I'm trying to undermine them. I really try and make them realize the fact that I'm acting out of my need to be ethical and I feel important about it, that it's not about them, that it's about the situation and the consequence, and really try and not make it personal. Making a situation personal is where things can go sideways. So when it comes to ethics, really stick with the facts and with the consequence. Does that help?
I'm Red. I'm a first-year higher education student affairs major, so I'm a grad student. And my question for you is, how do you balance work and your family, and then those times that you need to just debrief and relax?
Yeah. I've got a real routine. I think that's one of the things that you need to be able to start developing is a routine. I get up at 5 o'clock every day. I try and work out so many times a week. I, put the email away. I never answer email after about 8 o'clock. Okay, sometimes I might look at my phone, but I won't answer the email after that time. I spend time with my husband, and we do the things that we like to do. I try and golf on the weekends. I like to cook. So you got to find out what things you enjoy to do, and actually try to be regimented about it. Say, I'm not going to do this tonight. I'm going to do it tomorrow night. Now, are there times when my whole schedule gets thrown upside down because of the fact that I have to just take care of something that needs it? Yeah, but I'm pretty regimented about taking care of myself. And like I said, one of the things that I think is important, and I'm getting older, so I have to be more conscious of the fact that it's a marathon, not a sprint, is the fact that I need to take care of myself so I don't get stressed out, so I don't make the people that I work with stressed out. So I work pretty hard at doing it. Ice cream, as I said, very high on the list of things that make you kind of relax and chill out too.
My name is Alex Butler, and I'm a sophomore. My major is history, and I got a question about what you mentioned earlier about some of the downsides of being a leader. Oh, as a leader, how would you know if some people might take advantage, and how would you try to avoid those situations?
They would take advantage? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that honesty is a big part of what you deal with. I'm pretty good at reading people, and I'm pretty good at reading people's motivations. I find most people, I always start out with that people are honest and ethical, and if I feel them kind of skirting around, I have a conversation about cutting it out real soon. Because of the fact that I want them to realize it's okay to always be honest and ethical, that you don't have to be waiting for me to signal that. I've had very few instances where I felt taken advantage of, or that I felt people were not honest or ethical. It was really my opportunity to be able to confirm to them that what they wanted to be, which was ethical and honest, was the right way to go, and that I would support that as their boss and as their leader.
All right, and our final question. Hi, my name is Raheem Young. I'm a political science major, and I'm a junior here at Eastern. I just wanted to ask if you had one song, and one song only, to listen to while you were climbing like the Mount Everest of all your problems, what would it be?
It would be a Lady Gaga song. Definitely. I play a lot of Lady Gaga when I run. So, yeah, Lady Gaga. Definitely Lady Gaga.
Well, if we can give Dr. Schatzel a round of applause.